Hi everybody and welcome to an Age of Fantasy battle report. Dark Elves versus Ogres. The Necromancer's crusade against Teniras casts long shadows all over the land. All living creatures, folks and tribes strive to keep themselves alive and safe from the hordes of demons and undead. In a small, war-torn village, Ogre Champion Sul'Grk has settled with his tribes of ogres and goblins. They are as far away from the Necromancers' armies as possible, but that very spot has drawn the attention of an army of well-organized Dark Elves, led by Dark Elf Noble Caxpio. The Dark Elves are equally affected by the war, and their way to safety goes through the village. Sul'Grk is the tribe master. He has a tough value of 6. He has the Devour ability, and he is also a bully. And he is armed with a big pistol, a great weapon. And with him he has a group of ogre warriors, all with a tough value of 3, armed with dual hand weapons. One of them is a sergeant. And then he also has 2 groups of goblins. 10 goblins in each, armed with hand weapons and throwing weapons. And then they also have phalanx. Dark Noble Caxpio has a tough value of 3. He is fearless and furious. He is armed with great weapon, and he is a dread prince that gives him and his unit +1 in melee. With him he has 2 units of dark shooters, armed with hand weapons and repeater crossbows. And he also has 2 units of corsairs. They have stealth, and they are armed also with hand weapons and repeater crossbows. Caxpio himself is joined with 1 of the corsair units. The Dark Elves have deployed just outside the village on the left side of the battlefield, and from here they will try to attack and take the village. And the ogres and goblins deployed in the village will try to prevent that. And the strategic center of this battle is the skull objective in the middle of the battlefield, and this is a King of the Hill mission. Whoever controls the objective at the end of turn 4 will win the battle. Let's roll off. The Dark Elves will roll the ice cold blue dice, and the ogres and goblins the green ones. And that means the ogres and goblins will activate first. First unit to activate is the goblins. They rush forward in cover behind the large rock here. And from this position they are not close enough to shoot anything at the Dark Elves. Next unit, the Dark Elf leader and his unit of corsairs make an aggressive move. They rush all the way up to this ruined building, not close enough to the objective, but in cover and out of reach of the ogres as well. And now aware that his village is under attack, the tribe master Sul'Grk moves closer in defense of his people. Next up, the unit of dark shooters. They are no close combat specialists, but they are dangerous with their repeater crossbows. So they take a position here just on the other side of the bridge, where they can fire at anything that moves in the village. The second unit of goblins move all they can and still be able to shoot. So here at the corner of this building, 3 of the goblins are within shooting range of the dark shooters. They need 5s to hit, so 1 hit, and the dark shooters will defend with a 5. And that attempt failed, so 1 dark shooter is killed. And now the unit of corsairs here on the upper side and part of the battlefield cross the river, and they take cover behind the ruined building, and here they have a clear shot at the goblins. They can fire 10 short-range repeater crossbows hitting on 4s. And that was awful shooting. Only 2 hits, no rending or anything. 2 hits against the goblins. And they will now defend. They, of course, need 6s to do so, and they don't. So 2 goblins will be hit by the arrows and killed. But at least they are still around and they don't need any morale checks. So the unit of ogres here move closer. They can reach and seize the objective, but they cannot charge any of the Dark Elves. But the one and only objective is now controlled by the ogres. And now the dark shooters here with the long-range repeater crossbows will take advantage of their shooting range. They will position themselves here and fire at the goblins. The goblins are in cover though, so they will need rolls of 5 to hit. 10 shots. And that looks a lot better. 5 hits, but they are all rending. So the goblins again will need 6s, and with 1 reroll here, only 1 goblin will make the save. So 4 goblins are immediately hit and killed by the arrows. That still leaves 6, and they are not down to half strength. That was the conclusion of the first round. Casualties on both sides, but the ogres and goblins control the objective. All the units are now relatively close to each other and within shooting and charging range. Let's go to round number 2. The ogres will activate first, and the unit of ogre warriors who took control of the objective charges into the corsairs and the dark elf leader. The 3 warriors are all armed with dual hand weapons, but one of them is a sergeant and he will hit slightly better. So first 4 regular attacks hitting on 4s and a few hits, not overwhelming. And then the sergeant with his 4 attacks, he will be hitting on 3s and he will hit with 3 of his attacks, and that will be a total of 6 AP1 hits. So first the 5 regular corsairs will defend with rolls of 6. And each and every one of them will fail. The entire unit of corsairs are killed. Now the leader, he will defend with a 5, and he will actually defend the last hit. But he will be alone because his unit was just completely eliminated. But he can fight back and try to do some damage with his great weapon. And he will hit on 2s. And well, he still managed to fail 1 of his attacks, but 2 will hit, and the ogres will need 6s to defend. So they fail, and one of the ogres will take 2 points of damage and move back. But the Dark Noble Caxpio will have to make a successful morale check, otherwise he will leave because he lost the battle. But he is fine, he's also fearless, so he will stay and fight another day. The unit of dark shooters on the central part of the battlefield advances on the other side of the tree here, and then they have a plan to drown the ogres in a rain of arrows. 8 shots, and they will hit on 4s. And they hit. And most importantly, 3 of the hits are rending. So they count as AP4, and the ogres must roll 6s to block them. But let's begin with the regular hit. They will block that one with a roll of 4. And that arrow just bounces off the heavy ogre's skin. But the rending hits, they hit, and that means 3 wounds. So one of the ogres will be killed, and another one will take 2 wounds. They are not down to half strength yet. And now the Tribe Master Sul'Grk sees a chance to cut the head of the snake. He charges against the Dark Elf leader. 4 devastating attacks hitting on a 3. And he will hit with all his attacks. AP4, and that leaves sixes as the only chance to block, and he will roll 1, but the Dark Elf Noble still needs 3, and that means he takes 3 wounds. He is immediately smashed. So the Dark Elves are shockingly without leader now, but they still fight. The unit of 5 Dark Shooters advance, and they fire 10 shots against the Ogres, and they target the Tribe Master. They will hit on 4s, and as usual, a roll of 6 will be a rending hit. So 2 regular hits and 1 rending, not impressive. But let's begin with the rending hit, and the Tribe Master will defend that one, and he will also defend 1 of the 2 regular hits. So in the end, he will be hit by 1 arrow and take 1 wound. But with a tough value of 6, he still has a few left. The unit of goblins can shoot and they can fight, but they decide to charge the corsairs. So 8 attacks with their spears, hitting on rolls of 5. Can they do something against the well-organized unit of Dark Elves? Well, they can hit twice. And their weapons are not really that effective, but they still need 5s to block, and they can't. So 2 corsairs will be killed by the charging goblins, leaving only 3 left to fight back. And the Dark Elves are also equipped with hand weapons, but they hit on 4s. And they also hit twice. The hand weapons are not rending, but the goblins still need 6s, and 2 more goblins will go down. So this fight ended in a draw, and none of the units are down to half strength. But immediately after their fight, the unit of corsairs activate, but they have had enough of close combat, so they fire their repeater crossbows against the goblins. 6 attacks, hitting on 4s. And again, they hit with a couple of normal hits and a few rendings. It doesn't make a big difference. The goblins still need 6s. 1 6 is 1 block, but 3 goblins are struck by the arrows, and now the goblin unit will be below half strength. It's not a close combat morale check, but still they need to pass. Let's roll a die we actually can see, and with a roll of 1, they fail the morale check. They will still be on the battlefield, but they are wavering now, so their next activation must be used to get back into the fight and nothing else. The other unit of goblins advance 6 inches to the corner of this stone wall, and from here they have a clear sight and shot at the Dark Shooters. So they will attack with their ranged weapons 6 times, hitting on 5s. 3 hits against the Dark Shooters. They are AP nothing, but the Dark Shooters still have to roll 5s to block them. And they do that pretty well. 1 failed defense roll, and that means 1 Dark Shooter will be hit by the goblins and taken out. And that was the last activation of the second round. The Tribe Master and his Ogre Warriors have a heavy presence around the objective. Both sides have suffered casualties, and especially the Dark Elves, who lost their leader. Let's go to the third round. The Dark Elves still rely on their ranged attacks, so they advanced their maximum range of 6 inches to get as far away from the goblins as possible. And from this position, they have a clear sight at the ogres, and they will fire 8 repeater crossbow shots against the ogre warriors, still hitting on 4s. And really, really effective. Quite a few hits here, and 2 of them rending. So let's begin with the rending attacks, and the ogres cannot defend those, so they will at least be hit twice. Now the rest. and that's a bit more effective. They block all of them except one, and that will be a total of 3 hits against the Ogre warriors. And one of them is killed, and the remaining one, the sergeant here, takes 2 wounds. And that will force him to take morale test. So let's see if he can pass that. And he can't. He is deeply disturbed by the elven arrows. And still, it's not a close combat fight that he lost, so he will be wavering. And that could be a huge advantage for the Dark Elves. Now the Tribe Master is troubled by the sight of his warriors being killed and doing nothing. So he takes matters into his own hands and charges against the Dark Shooters. First, he will use his Devour ability when he charges a unit. On a roll of 5 or more, he will automatically deal 1 wound. Well, he doesn't succeed with that, but he can attack with his great weapon. 4 attacks hitting on 3s. So 3 hits with AP 4. The Dark Shooters must roll 6s. And of course, they don't. So 3 Dark Shooters are immediately smashed by the heavy great weapon of the Tribe Master. So 1 remaining Dark Shooter can fight back, but nothing really comes out of that. So the remaining Dark Elf here lost the fight, and he will have to pass morale, and if he fails, he's out of there. But with a roll of 6, even though all his comrades have just been smashed by the Tribe Master, he decides to stay. The 3 remaining Corsairs move around the goblins 6 inches, and they advance to the corner of the building. And they plan to shoot the Tribe Master in the back. 6 shots with their short-range repeater crossbows hitting on 4s. And that could be trouble for the Tribe Master. He will be hit 3 times, but 2 of them are rending. Let's see if he can block the rending hits with 6s. He can one of them, but he will be hit at least once. And the other regular hit, he blocks that one too. So he is hit only once. And that of course will give him 1 additional wound and take him to a total of 2 now. The goblins are too far away to do something. They cannot reach or hit anybody, so they will just rush up the central part of the battlefield. And that leaves the remaining Dark Elf here from the unit that was just more or less obliterated by the Tribe Master to advance and fire his 2 shots against the remaining Ogre warrior. And he will hit with both of them. One of them rending. He could actually take out the Ogre warrior here for good. He doesn't block the rending hit, and he doesn't block. He blocks the other one well. So he's hit once, but that will also be enough to take him to 3 wounds and take him out of the battle. 1 Dark Elf against 1 Ogre. Well, the Dark Elf got it. The wavering unit of goblins here activate, and that means they are back into business in the next round. And that was the end of the 3rd round. The Ogres and Goblins still control the objective because the Dark Elves had not been able to get close enough yet. 1 round remaining. Who will be victorious? We'll see about that at the end of round 4. The Dark Elves activate first, and after all, this is about the objective. So the Corsairs move 6 inches, and that will get them close enough to seize the objective. And they will still be able to fire 6 shots against the Tribe Master. They will hit on 4s as usual, with 6s being rending hits. Well, no rending hits this time, but still 3 hits, and the Tribe Master must roll 4s. If he fails all of them, well, he fails 2 of them. So now he is hit with 2 additional wounds, and that takes him to 4. So he is now below his starting tough value, and he will have to take morale tests, or a morale test. He will pass with a roll of 3. And with a 6, he is in great shape, even though he is heavily wounded. And unfortunately for the Dark Elves, it's now payback time. He charges a unit, and first he will see if he can devour any of them with a roll of 5 or 6, and that's already 1 wound. Then he will attack with 4 additional attacks, and 2 of them will also hit. They will need 6s to block, and they block 1 of them. The unit will take a total of 2 wounds, and that leaves 1 Corsair in the fight. He can fight back, but he is no close combat specialist, and he hits nothing. So let's remove 2 Corsairs. 1 is still left. The champion here will move slightly back 1 inch, but a morale test for the remaining Dark Elf is needed, otherwise he will leave the battlefield immediately. And a roll of 4 is good enough. He will stay and guard the objective. The objective is now contested by both armies so far. Now the Dark Shooters, they advance to get closer, and of course they prepare a rain of arrows against the Goblins, because they have not yet activated. And a poor attempt. Only 2 hits. Regular hits. The Goblins will block with 6s, and 1 of them is blocked. Only 1 Goblin will be hit. But 1 is enough to take the Goblins to half strength. They will need a morale test. And what a spirit. They will keep fighting. So what do they do now, the Goblins? They call out a war cry, and then they charge against the objective and the remaining Dark Elf. 5 furious Goblins in a charge. So they will attack 5 times, and they will hit on 5s. And they will make 2 hits against the Dark Elf. He will need 4 or more to block. And he fails 1. And that means the end of the remaining Dark Elf Corsair. The objective is back on Ogre and Goblin hands. So the Dark Elves now see the objective of this mission slip out of their hands. Only 1 Dark Elf can do something, and this Dark Shooter rushes in to be close enough to the objective to contest it. He cannot do anything else, but he will be close enough. And the only option now is for the remaining unit of Goblins to remove him. And, well, let's see if they can. Only 3 Goblins, and they advance to get in shooting range of their throwing weapons and small bows and whatever they have. And they will fire at the Dark Shooter. If they can remove him, this will be a victory for them. 3 shots hitting on 5s. And they hit once. 1 shot will hit. Will it be enough? The Dark Shooter will need a 5 to block. And he fails with a roll of 1. 1 well-aimed stone from a Goblin will hit the Dark Shooter and kill him. So now no Dark Elves are within reach of the objective, and this will be a victory for the Ogres and Goblins. They fought together to defend the village, and even a well-coordinated Dark Elf attack couldn't shake them enough. The Dark Shooters here will very, very quickly leave the outskirts of the village and crossed the bridge, never to be seen again. It's a time of war, but also a time of hope, and the Ogres and Goblins have shown the forces of the living of Teniras that they can be counted on in the continuous fight against the Necromancer. Thanks a lot for watching this battle report. I hope you'll join me for future bad reps.